Um, Thank you all for being here. As I wrote in the email, we have a first draft of our existing conditions section of the active transportation plan we've been working on. So I wanted to give you all the chance to review that and talk about it today, as well as provide some, I guess, general project status updates, what we've been working on over the last few months. So I think I'll provide some updates. I'll briefly go through the structure of the plan, what's currently in there, and then I'll open it up for kind of discussion, comments, feedback, initial feedback, and then we'll wrap up and talk about what's kind of next in terms of what we're working on for the plan. So in terms of a status update, this was kind of the main thing, but we have also been hard at work with our public engagement efforts over the last few months. So we opened a survey, I think either last fall or like the beginning of this year. I checked this morning, we're up to 91 responses, which is great. At some point in this meeting, I'll probably drop the link in the chat if you all want to continue sharing that so we can get kind of as many responses on that as possible. But in addition to that, in February, we hosted our first public meeting in Waterbury. That was a design charrette, so we had boards all around the room. One was a map talking about or like asking participants what kind of or where they would like to see active transportation improvements in the region or if they had ideas for specific projects. And others just had to do with specific design elements, what people want to see, what people don't want to see in terms of active transportation improvements. And that meeting was very successful. We got a lot of good feedback. We had a lot of great one-on-one conversations with people throughout the region. So we actually just hosted another one last week in Bristol. We had fewer people attend that one, but that was still good. We got some good one-on-one time with the people that were there. And then tomorrow evening, we are kind of doing the same thing, but that is going to be a completely virtual one. So for people who weren't able to attend either of those, we'll kind of go through the same kind of charrette, but on a Zoom format. And yeah, like I said, we've been getting some really good feedback, some good project ideas and just some kind of good engagement with people that will hopefully be able to serve as advocates within their community for these kind of active transportation improvements. Rich, is there anything else that you wanted to add to that, or that I think I covered everything?
Sorry, I had to figure out how to unmute while sharing my screen.
No worries.
No, I think that pretty well covers it. We've been fortunate to have some decent response at these public meetings, and so the feedback we're getting is valuable. Elliot did leave out that we have been planning to and starting engagement with the elected boards of our member towns. And so we spoke several weeks ago at the Naugatuck Board of Burgess and Mayor, effectively about the role that the elected officials within our communities play in getting this executed ultimately, and about what the vision is and how our towns are, equal partners in getting this done. And Christian, who's another member of our transportation planning staff, will be speaking to Oxford on Wednesday of this week. And Elliot, if you want to just do a quick update on the other towns we are already scheduled for.
Yeah, so we reached out, I think I reached out to 9 of our towns to get like kind of like a good geographic spread, as well as reached out to some municipalities that maybe we haven't engaged with as much in the past. And I think we've got 5 responses. So as Rich mentioned, Naugatuck and Oxford. We also have Shelton, Southbury, and Cheshire already scheduled. And I will probably circle back to the other towns that haven't responded and see if there's any interest in getting on an agenda and speaking with them as well. And we have some more.
Of this advisory committee, if you are here representing one of our towns and we do not have a time scheduled, but you would like us to come and speak to your board of elected officials, we are very happy to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can just get in touch with me and I will be happy to email or contact, or if you wanted to contact directly and just CC me, that is also okay. Yeah, and then we have some other planned public engagement. I'll kind of talk about that at the end. That's still in the early stage of the planning. But it's okay if I share my screen? for this. Here we go. So I'm just going to go through this kind of quickly, and just for those, I hope a lot of you did already have a chance to kind of go through this and take a look at it. I just want to talk about the structure and what's in the existing conditions section so far, I guess.
Zoom
So
in on
I'm sorry.
Can you zoom in on the actual
Oh yeah,
document
sorry.
and
Let
hide
me,
some of the tracking and
yeah.
comments? Not that we don't want to show them, it's just I can't read what this says.
Yeah, my bad. Oh, too big. That's good. All right, so the plan kind of starts with a policy overview of some of the policy trends in terms of active transportation. Both at the federal level, we talk about IJA, and we talk about some of the Connecticut policy trends. I guess most recently, some of the Vision Zero changes that the state legislature has been making, as well as, I guess we have a section on policy innovation, which talks about some of the things like the new e-bike rebate in the state. So that just is meant to give an overview of that. And then this is kind of the meat of the plan, is the active transportation profile, which talks about, I guess, just all the different types of active transportation, as well as what facilities currently exist within the region, as well as stuff that may not be constructed yet, but that has already been planned, routed, or designed. So briefly mentioned the Bike Walk Connecticut scorecard. That's from 2014. They just redid that last year, I believe. I still feel like, or I think we're still waiting on the official report from that, but we'll update that once we have the new information from that. Talk briefly about the differences between planning for urban, rural, and suburban densities within the region. Section on the bike network. So we talk about on-street bike facilities, of which there are currently very few within the region. So that section is pretty short. Then a map of the existing facilities. And then, oh, here is the heading. This is pretty much the meat of this section, the off-street bike facilities, multi-use trails, which I think is also one of the big things that we're hoping to accomplish with this plan in general. Because of course, because of the Naugatuck River Greenway, that's the biggest one, but of course also the Farmington Canal Trail, Middlebury Greenway, the other trails. So this goes into the existing ones. And then we talk about, I believe these are the ones that are planned now. And then the other, that's all energy. And then we talk about some of the other studies that we've done, like Bristol, Oxford, and some of the ongoing studies that we are doing currently. Then we talk about the pedestrian network, and some general recommendations for pedestrian planning, and the sidewalk network, the current pedestrian facilities. And then this is another really important part of this, is the kind of multimodal connections. So we talk briefly about that and how to plan for that, as well as existing multimodal connections between, for example, the NRG and the Waterbury line. And then the last part of this existing conditions section so far is the safety analysis, which is the bike ped crash data, brief overview on our Vision Zero planning. So yeah, the data is just in pretty basic tables and graphs for now. We'll probably make this look nicer for the final project. And of course, we have a map of the crashes. I believe GIS is currently working on a list of the exact hotspots. This is hard to see. You can kind of visualize what some of the hotspots are, but like a specific list of locations where we can plan future improvements is underway. And that is pretty much it for the existing conditions. The last section is going to be the priority improvement areas, but that is going to be the stuff that I guess that's like the actual like plan of the part of the plan. So that will be based on some of the public engagement ideas from the advisory committee, the member municipalities themselves. And I think that is going to be more of the next step. So we haven't really started with that quite yet, but we have a lot of ideas for that so far. But yeah, that is the existing conditions so far. And I wanted to open it up for if there's any initial comments, questions, and then we can just have an overall discussion of if there's things to add, things to take out. It could be substantive as well as smaller things to include. So yeah, I'd just like to open it up if you guys have anything to say about this so far.
So I think if we start with section 3.1 here, this policy overview, I believe I saw Paul from the DOT's new active transportation unit is on the call. And so I don't know if you've had a chance to read through our draft at all, or anybody else on the call who's involved, but if especially if you have seen federal or state policies that are not included in here, please feel free to speak up and let us know.
Hello, Paul Ashworth with the, as you introduced, Active Transportation Unit. Nothing jumped out at me when I read through this, but this is something I'd be happy to ruminate on a little bit, keep an eye out for. So I'll be in touch if I can think of something that's not already in there. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the establishment of your unit is a pretty big deal in itself, you know, and so certainly if anything in this sticks out to you, but just even if there are things you're working on that we haven't highlighted yet, or the existence of your unit itself that we want to make sure we highlight as a step the state is taking to move this stuff forward.
I have a comment. I don't know if you're kind of going in order or not, but Jim from Cheshire. So one comment I had is that, I mean, obviously the focus here is regional. It's kind of transportation more or less, I think, kind of throughout the region rather than sort of local. I mean, obviously locals mentioned, but one question I have is, so most of our, at the local level, most of our roads are local roads, or they're set at 25 miles an hour. That's the state, currently the state minimum. Through streets, it seems like there's an opportunity locally for through streets that are local through streets, town managed to to do more as far as encouraging safe bike travel, whether it's some sort of minimal signage or markings, or even more substantial road modifications, whether it's speed humps or something like that. I'm just wondering if there could be sort of a as a part of this a guide for local communities to make these changes to their local roads, that a local municipality could then kind of take from that to to go ahead and do those things, as we sort of wait to have more of these intertown connections, to focus a little bit more on the local bike facilities. I don't think I'm completely describing what I'm trying to say that well at the moment, but maybe you guys get the gist.
Yeah, I think we get what you're saying, and so I don't disagree. I think we need to include more of that in here. Especially we look at federal and state policy, and some of the state policy is allowing more of this than ever before, but there's an opportunity to highlight some of the local stuff that's happening as a way for towns to share best practices. And then unrelated to this plan, but similar, I guess everything is related in the end to our ultimate goal. Our engineering office right now is in the middle of a complete streets guidebook that is exactly that. It's meant to be, what are the policy, what are the engineering requirements, what are the steps that towns have to take to implement, and it goes through, I think we're looking at something like it's like 90 separate complete streets elements that can either be taken separately or together to improve the pedestrian and cyclist experience. And so we're hoping to have that published. I think we were saying August or September, but we have at our next Transportation Technical Advisory Committee meeting in June, we're going to show the first draft of that. And there's no doubt that that is related here and should get mentioned in this plan.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to bring up. I was hoping to include that, if not directly as an appendix or some kind of link within this plan.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I was thinking. And as far as in looking at the future active transportation facilities, I'm seeing some, I mean, just looking at Cheshire again, I'm seeing some things on here that I guess I wasn't all that aware of or maybe proposed or in planning. I'm wondering where we can sort of get some more information about some of the stuff that's on the map. Is that from you guys or is that from DOT or?
Yeah, I'm not exactly, you're talking about this? I'm not exactly sure what that is. Rich and our GIS team made this map and we provided some of the improvements to him, but Rich, I don't know if you could speak to what that is.
Yeah, so some of this is actually some of this really belongs in the next chapter of this and the future conditions, right? One of our big goals is to get all 19 towns connected through some active transportation or through some kind of a multi-use trail. But this, without seeing specifically, I believe the blue line, and Aaron, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe the blue line is the proposed connection between the airline trail on the east side of the state and the Farmington Canal in Cheshire.
Yeah, that one actually I'm familiar with. It's the Route 71, and then there's the kind of pink or magenta line on the top of the
Right.
town. Wasn't familiar
So
with
I think
those.
the pink line is 84. I'm pretty confident that is the existing highway.
Well, I think this one, it's those are, yeah. In
Okay.
the state's last active transportation plan, they did their own analysis. That's what the legend says, and they proposed. They didn't go into detail about any of this, but they had a methodology where they proposed what they thought should be designated bike routes in the future. But I don't think any of that has actually been planned or designed yet. It's more conceptual.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the elements to that plan was using existing state roads as part of the route, and so it does not necessarily mean there was a planned separate facility there. But that the riding in the shoulder of the existing road was considered part of the state's broader routing network. I don't know how we don't love that being the proposed route by itself. But
Okay.
we'd love to hear what you think about that potential alignment.
About you mean the Route 70 being a route or?
Yeah.
I mean, state roads in general in Cheshire are great, are great routes for cycling, assuming we can get some more separation, in some cases, some protected separation between the cars and cycling.
Yeah, 70 is not slow.
No, 70 is not slow. It's also quite narrow in some places.
Yeah.
Route 10, on the other hand, is even better. Most places it's pretty wide, and with the recent paving, the shoulders have been made wider. So, but you're not going to get, without more protective lanes, you're not going to get many people out there, riding
For sure.
in the routes like some of us maniacs do. But that brings me to my other thought, and I'll shut up. But the Route 10, as some of you guys are probably aware, there's a major new shopping development going in the north end of town in Cheshire. That's it's 140 units of multifamily. It's another 300 something units of apartments. It's a huge commercial development. So we're expecting that to obviously have a significant impact on traffic going up and down Route 10 in Cheshire. So there's a need to do a corridor study, if that's what you call it, as far as what that's going to do to traffic. And it seems like it's a great time to, since we're thinking about active transportation in the region, it's a great time to be looking at Route 10 as a major route for safe active transportation. especially with probably the increase in traffic we'll be seeing. So how
Yeah,
do
for
we,
Doom is
yes,
up.
how do we locally, how do we
Did you
proceed
hear
with getting that done? I think that the
An
town has had some
invitation.
conversations with the COG over some traffic studies. I don't know what the sort of status of that is, and we can talk about it later offline. I just thought of that just now, but
Yeah.
but the main question is the corridor study idea. Was that, because I've seen in this report, I'm seeing some corridor studies here and there. Is that the COG doing those corridor studies, or is that the state DOT doing those?
So what we've been talking about on Route 10 would be us doing the study. We would manage the study through the DOT's corridor study process. And so it's a combination of state and federal and local funds. And we've been working with the DOT's Intergovernmental Affairs Office, effectively seeing when that next solicitation, when the next round of corridor studies will be held. Route 10 for us in our region, but actually Route 10 kind of up and down from, basically from the New Haven town line all the way into Canton is just challenging. It's high volumes, in some places high speeds, in some places it's really wide, in some places it's too narrow, it's poorly served by public transit. There's a lot of challenges that go on 10. And while I would love to fix the whole thing, if we're looking at the piece that is in our region, we see all of it, right? The north end of Cheshire is a significant employment hub for us. Cheshire has a ton of commercial and residential mixed together. It's got schools on Route 10. It's got parks on Route 10. And then it has the Farmington Canal, which runs parallel. And so there's no question that active transportation needs to get improved out there. We need to take a more comprehensive look at it. But also, we've been talking about public transit on Route 10, which ties in really well. But especially with the amount of employment at the north end of Cheshire along Route 10 and West Johnson and that whole area. So the short answer is we are looking at it. We're hoping to get something more formally underway very soon.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm happy to talk more about it too after, if you want to give me a call at some point after this, or if you have questions or thoughts about it.
Okay, great.
Just wondering if there might be a spot. I mean, it's not sort of conceptual ideas that are out there for, connecting things that, we don't really have a study plan. I know NVCOG just submitted an application for funding to study connecting basically Danbury to Waterbury along an old rail line. So we might want to highlight those ideas, even if there's not a study like impending, or, if you don't get funded for that, just, to put the idea on paper, maybe give it a little more traction.
For sure. Well, and so the next piece to this, once we get through existing conditions and public engagement, is the future conditions and the kind of the vision for what it looks like. And one of the things we've been talking about when we go to city council meetings and everything is how, oh, thank you, Jerry. We'll get to you in just a second here. How we've been, how we need our towns to buy in on all this, and how the broad vision is to connect all 19 towns eventually, to have the Naugatuck River Greenway serve as that central spine, and then have ribs coming off of it into all 19 towns. And then eventually to address the connections within each town to whatever their trail is. And all of that only makes sense if we're talking about connecting outside of our region too. So, Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if you copied. I was talking about ADA. Just if it's in the top part of the federal policy trends, unless it's buried within like Safe Streets for All.
I don't know if it's in there actually at all, because I think all this covers recent policy trends. We can add a section on that.
That's a very good call out. Yeah, we've got to have that in there.
Yeah. And where do you have complete streets called out? Is it somewhere else, or is it a state program?
Talk about the state
Oh,
a
there
little
it
bit
is.
here.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of policy, but we haven't mentioned anything about complete streets yet, in terms of planning, because I think we will plan to have a section that covers some of the design strategies, I guess you could say, and that's, I think, the section that would include this rather than the existing conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Elliot, we want to make sure we get the DOT's plan for ADA in here for what's going to happen here in our region. Which for
Yeah,
anybody who does
absolutely.
not know, the department, after running a survey last year, determined that one of the best steps they could take to support communities is providing direct assistance in developing and eventually maintaining transition plans, ADA transition plans. And so I believe the department has just hired the firm and we'll be getting started with our 19 towns as kind of the first pilot region for this shortly. And hopefully we'll have all 19 towns with a high quality transition plan sometime by, this time next year, maybe the end of next calendar year. Paul?
Thank you. I saw on that map you've got the bicycle routes or the bicycle network from the old ATP or the state ATP plan. Are there any? Do any of the towns in this region do any of them have their own like master bicycle pedestrian plans?
I am not 100% sure, actually. I know, for example, Southbury is currently working on a trails master plan, which they're presenting later this week, and then they'll send us info on. But Richard, Aaron, do you know if any other towns do?
No, there's a few towns working on them, like you said, with Southbury. And some conversations we've had about helping get them started, but I don't know that any have them completed.
Okay. I'm just curious, thinking about the connections and connecting towns. The multi-use trail map is really important if we're talking about connecting all the different towns, but also, I mean, the local street grid is where most people do, those short trips every day. And that comes down to the local government, but it's also, if we can coordinate that across, this seems like a good opportunity to plant seeds about that idea and connect all those local grids together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we could have the best trail network in the world, but it doesn't matter if you can't get to it. So, and like you said, those local streets, it's part of why we're in the next year, we'll be publishing this Complete Streets guidebook. We'll be adopting a Complete Streets goal as a region, but yeah, that's a very good call out.
But that's very exciting. Your Complete Streets guidebook. Was that, I know you mentioned engineering principles.
Mm-hmm.
Is it aimed mostly at engineers, like local traffic authorities, or is it also for the public? Like, it's just very interesting. What else is, I guess, programmed there?
Yeah, so it's a little of all of the above. And so the general concept is with each element, we introduce the element itself, talk about what are the engineering requirements, some of the basics, just where does this fit? How do you make it work? And so in that sense, city engineers or town engineers will be able to get some value out of it. We talk about really the why, like what does each of these items bring in value? So that piece is aimed a little bit more first at the public, at anybody who looks at this, but then also at local elected officials who, may hear the proposal, but not fully understand the value that it brings other than being something that is designed to slow traffic down. And, as we know, not all elected officials are in support of slowing traffic down. And so we try and really lean in on what is the value your town receives from these different elements. And then there's, effectively from there, where do you go to learn more and figure out if it works or if it's the right thing, beyond what we can offer in support.
That is fantastic, especially in the value add lens, like that framework, like this is how it can help you, and just really pushing on that. Is that something, once it's complete, would you be willing to share that with, I guess, the rest of Connecticut? This is a project that the Active Transportation Unit has been thinking about recently, is Complete Streets as an idea. How can we inform more people about that and put it in a way that's understandable by the general public, but also gives local traffic authorities something that they can really work with?
Absolutely. No, we'd be very happy to share. We actually had a conversation last week with Main Street Connecticut about doing some kind of a series across the state to highlight some of the key features in it. So
That was,
yeah, no,
sorry, that,
we would love for all of our towns to use it, but we would love to see all 169 towns get some value out of it too.
excellent. You said that was with Bike Walk Connecticut?
Main Street.
Oh, sorry, Main Street, Connecticut?
Mhm.
Okay.
Or I guess Connecticut Main Street. I forget which order they are, but whichever order they are, whatever that organization we spoke with about it.
Cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jerry? Jerry, did you have a?
You're muted, yeah.
Yes, this 3.1 policy overview, the 30 pages, what document is this embedded in? What's the master document?
The master document of this entire document? Or-
Yeah, it just starts off at 3.1.
Yeah, so this is the active transportation plan, which the first section is gonna be an introduction. Chapter 2 is gonna be the vision and goals, and then this is the third chapter of the full plan. I can send you what we have in terms
Okay.
of the, yeah.
Great. And then the second question is, I know we always talk about funding in the disadvantaged communities. Is there going to be a chapter in that or a map showing that part? Because I know funding is driven a lot by you get extra points for that. And you have to go like search for it. I think it would be better if it was like actually in the document itself.
Yeah, I think that is a fantastic idea. I don't think that's currently in here, but I think that's something that we would hope to have in here.
Yeah, Elliot, can you remind me, in the scope, do we have an implementation section? If not, we should look at adding another chapter to focus on implementation, identifying the funding sources that exist, the challenges towns will have to overcome to be able to implement some of the vision, as well as resources that can help them do so.
Yeah, I believe that's in the project outline and scope, but I don't think that's something we've started yet.
Anyone else have thoughts you want to share, or Elliot, do you want to move on to the next item here?
Yeah, we could move on. I sent this to everybody, so if something comes to mind after this, please feel free to either email me directly any thoughts, ideas, things to include, or go in the document and make track changes and just return it to me. Either are fine, but yeah, take your time to think about this, and let me know if there's anything else you'd like to add, but we can move on from this specifically. I can share the agenda again. That's pretty much like all we really wanted to talk about. So I'll just give an overview of some of the next things we're hoping to accomplish with this, since we have most of the existing conditions done. As Rich mentioned, the main next part to work on in the plan is the actual planning and future network envisioning, which we will hope to get through a lot of the public engagement that we're doing by analyzing survey responses, by talking to people at public meetings, as well as talking with our elected officials and decision makers, and any ideas that we may have as well from the past. So if any of you also have any ideas for that, feel free to share them now, or just we are also probably going to talk about it later. You can email me at any time about that while we're undergoing that process. And in terms of other public engagement, we will be doing, so far we have 2 planned activities, I guess you could call them. One on the Waterbury Greenway in May, and one, or the Waterbury section of the NRG in May, and one in Derby and Ansonia on the Derby Greenway, Ansonia Riverwalk in June. We haven't really started planning those completely yet. We've just set aside dates and times for them. But once we have more of an idea of what those events will be like, and the plan, I will forward those as well. So you can either attend or share with anybody that you know that might want to attend and engage with us at those events while we walk the greenways. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had.
Yeah, there's one other relevant document that I want to share with this group if anybody is interested in looking at it further. On Friday, we published the first of our annual Vision Zero progress reports. So for anybody on the call who does not know, we as the NVCOG are the first MPO or first COG in Connecticut to adopt the Vision Zero goal. And that is to eliminate all fatalities and serious injuries by 2060. One of the things we committed to in that process was annual reports sharing the progress the region has made, as well as some data about the issue of traffic violence here. And so if you go to the NVCOG website, nvcogct.gov, and then in the top, click on publications. It is our most recent publication, full of some really good data. Because 22 was the first year that we had a Vision Zero goal in place, we have no significant accomplishments listed, but we do have a lot of information about the region's Vision Zero efforts. Obviously, one of the biggest parts of that Vision Zero effort is active transportation. And so we kind of have a three-pronged approach here. The first is active transportation. The second is VMT reduction, which we have also been planning for, and in September of last year, adopted a VMT reduction strategy for our region. And then the last is traditional roadway safety for drivers and transit users. And so I encourage everybody to just take a look and please send us comments on those documents as well. We want to make sure that especially our reporting is valuable outside of just our staff. But we did have staff work quite hard on those, and want to make sure people look at them. And so again, it's our website, nvcogct.gov, and then if you click on publications, you'll see it there. So we're in the process right now of putting our report together for 23. As we all know, 2022 and 2023 were bad years for vulnerable road user safety. 24 is on track to be just as bad, and so we hate to report the numbers we're reporting, but if we don't talk about them, we can't fix them. And we encourage all of you to share those numbers with any relevant parties as well. It's just one more reason why this work is so important to us.
Could I make a comment there?
Yeah, please.
Thank you. The in reporting the injuries and like injuries, deaths as a result of vehicle interactions between pedestrians, bikes, active transportation, and having conversations that may be hard but are important. Have you, and it may be in a different chapter, but is there a section on equity or even showing the data on how these injuries, deaths, how they're distributed among the population, amongst the population? How many come from these affected people? How many of them come from disadvantaged communities? And can we set a goal for how we want to combat that as a result of the plan?
Yeah,
I think that's a great idea.
So in our first reporting, we didn't particularly focus on our environmental justice or equity focus areas in the region, but I think it's a good call for next year's. I can say this because Roy is in the room as the city engineer for Waterbury. He's heard me say this before. It is a huge disproportionate number of roadway fatalities, and especially vulnerable users, are here in Waterbury. And the city is taking a really aggressive stance against it as well as us. And so that's I think it's very reasonable for us to set a goal to focus on some of those equity focus areas first.
And even in the this active transportation plan, in that data you had about the injuries per year, it just show it. I think would be a great way to just communicate that visually. Say, look at the disparity here. This is something we need to focus on. That could be a really powerful moment in the existing conditions section.
You know, I don't want to disagree with you guys, but how do you, because it's all relative, right? You know, Waterbury and Ansonia, for example, have a 40% low to mod income population. So how do you, make that? I don't know. I'm thinking like if you were to do a study about Woodbridge, then it would show that there weren't many disproportionately disadvantaged people that, understand what I'm saying, or?
I think that's
Yeah,
a good point. We should,
right
I'm
now,
sorry, go ahead.
there are so many different measures of equity out there right now,
Mhm.
that it does make it particularly challenging to figure out what is it we want to focus on as the measure of equity that defines those areas.
Yeah, I mean, a relative compare. I'm sorry, we keep cutting you off, Paul. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say that's something that we could talk about in the community engagement portion. I think getting that input from people would be a good. But that's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Thank you.
No, we're seeing it right now in the transportation alternatives solicitation is open, and one of the questions is this an area of high need? And determining how to answer that question has been a real challenge for the COGs as we put this together. How do you, I mean, for active transportation, yes, right? The whole state is an area of high need. But when you look at equity and routes to school and all the other criteria that are listed, it gets especially challenging.
Yeah, whether to choose or to try to make some like combination variable where you weight race, income, ethnicity, and then filter that through what available data you have about who, is affected. It could a geographic maybe seems easier if you just have census tracts and demographics within census tracts, but.
Yeah, well, we can we'll take a look at. We have an equity explorer that we're putting together as an agency that will mess around with a little bit, see what we identify, and we can bring the concept back here to this group and see what you all think. I just want to check. I see there are a few items in the chat. Jerry said, thanks for giving input and thanks for the hard work. Amy, just want to congratulate. Thank you, Amy. And thank you, Jim, as well. Yeah, Elliot has really done some fantastic work getting us to this point. So I do really want to recognize the work that he has put in, but also the work that's been done by our GIS and data team to get all this together.
Yeah, but I guess if there is nothing else, thank you all for your input, comments. It was very helpful for us as we're moving forward. And yeah, we deeply appreciate you working with us on this. But that's kind of all we had. I'll send out meeting notes for reference once maybe sometime next week. But yeah, that's it.
Yes, thank you all. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for including. Have a good week.